hands are tied, please.
Grab your stuff.
Can you grab it? Because I already got tased by the police.
Grab
and I
your
double
stuff
dare you.
And you're
I
leaving.
already been tased by the police.
A classroom freakout caught on Bodycam as a Florida substitute teacher comes face to face with police.
No problem. Thank you, Jesus. It's time. I'm ready.
Let's go.
No, I'm not gonna. I need that piece of paper. Don't play with me.
Officers reveal the shocking allegations leading up to this moment and key details about the suspect that could make this situation even more complicated. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. I want you to think back to when you were in school and when you walked into a classroom and you saw that your regular teacher was not going to be in that day and you had a sub. You might have thought it was going to be an easy day at school. Maybe they wheel in a TV and you could watch a movie and that was it. Well, that is not the case that played out in Lake County, Florida, when students there had a substitute teacher. According to police, this teacher's erratic behavior didn't begin when officers arrived. Witness accounts accused her of yelling, making inappropriate gestures, and even assaulting a student before officers intervened. Now, you caught a glimpse of the incident caught on police body cam, and we're going to get into all of this footage that was released by the department here in just a moment. But we also have the official police report from the Lake County Sheriff's Office revealing crucial details about this case that could potentially lead to a more complicated legal process. And that's something we're going to break down here with trial attorney Krista Ramey here in a moment. But let's backtrack. Let's set the scene. We're at Lake Mineola High School, serving roughly 2,300 students, grades 9 through 12 in Mineola, Florida, which is roughly a 30-minute drive from Disney World. Now, according to the police report, on the morning of April 20th, a request was broadcasted over the school radio for an administrator to respond to a classroom. Not long after, at around 10:20 in the morning, a school resource officer received a crisis staff alert and responded to the area where it was coming from. Here's what that resource officer relayed to a nearby conference room.
My other deputy, this is a 2-deputy high school. My other deputy was already in the classroom with the teacher, and the kids were already out by the time I got there.
Okay.
The teacher was just going crazy, yelling random things, yelling at us, telling us to read papers, just stuff like that.
The substitute teacher, identified as 42-year-old Angela Jordan, is now face-to-face with officers, allegedly acting erratically and making disorganized statements that didn't make sense. At one point, the report says that she even told the officers to, quote, put her in prison for life. And now here's how the confrontation went down inside the classroom, originally beginning with attempted mediation by the principal.
Those are your words, ma'am, okay? So I'm not going to use them against you. I just want to know what you need from us. What do you need from us? If you're not going to cooperate, ma'am, we're going to escort you out of this building. We do not need to have this going on. Is a student start this? Were you having trouble in that regard? We need to know, ma'am. Okay, she's not going to answer. She needs to leave the premises.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you please escort her
Yep.
out?
Grab your stuff. You're leaving.
Oh, the first thing I need to get is that piece of paper, sir.
No, you're grabbing your stuff and you're leaving.
Oh, then please grab my stuff because I am not a threat and I will not be killed when I
Grab
lift
your
my hand.
stuff and you're leaving.
Okay, then my hands are tied, please.
Grab your stuff
it.
and
Can you
you're
grab it?
leaving.
Because I already got tased by the police
Grab
and I
your
double dare
stuff
you.
and you're
I
leaving.
already been tased by the police.
If I have to tell you again, you're going to go to jail for trespassing. They
That's
asked you to
fine.
leave. Grab
That's
your
fine.
stuff.
I already got tased by the
Grab
police in Pine
your
Hills.
stuff. I'm not in Pine Hills.
Okay, then you won't listen
Grab
to what
your
I
stuff.
said.
Grab your
Then
stuff.
you're gonna say I was a threat.
Grab your stuff.
You thought there was a weapon, right? Then
Grab
you're gonna
your
say
stuff.
I was a threat. Go, it's right there. I told you.
This
I'm
is
retarded.
your last chance. Grab your
Go
stuff.
ahead. Go ahead. Do
Okay.
it your way.
All right.
That's great. It's time. It's time. Because you can't even answer. You can't even do one instruction I asked for. No problem. Thank you, Jesus. It's time. I'm ready.
Hey, Robert. That's your 20.
Yup. That's my water, my lunchbox.
My office.
And I need my piece of paper for proof. And I need my piece of paper that's up there for
I'm
proof.
the channel, Mr. Robert.
And I need my water bottle, please, sir.
I'm sorry. sorry, what was that?
Let's go.
No, I'm not gonna. I need that piece of paper. Don't put me.
Go.
So this situation is intense to say the least. A substitute teacher in charge of high school students now in a standoff with police that eventually leads to an arrest right inside the classroom. Now you might be wondering, what prompted all of this alert by staff members in the first place? Here's what the resource officer continued to describe after the fact.
That we ended up taking her out, and then later we learned that she put hands.
Yeah.
I guess she got mad. There's a video, so I got to see some of the beginning. I guess she got mad on the phone, for the school's phone, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Started yelling, started dancing provocatively in the classroom, telling them that she used to be a prostitute, stuff like that. It's just very random things. We don't understand what was going on exactly.
So now we're learning more details about what allegedly took place here inside the classroom with students still present. And it starts with Jordan appearing upset while on the school's phone. Now the officer here gives a brief summary of what was relayed to him by witnesses, but the police report goes into even more specifics. Quote, through statements and investigation, it was learned that prior to our arrival, Miss Jordan had been acting erratically inside the classroom. She was yelling, screaming, and slamming her hands on a desk. She began dancing in a sexually suggestive manner, twerking, and made inappropriate statements to students, including telling them that she would engage in sexual activity with them and referring to herself as a $1 million prostitute. But that's not all that happened, police say. Here's what the school resource officer continued to describe.
The kids ended up leaving class because another teacher heard it, and I guess they escorted them over to another classroom, from what I gathered, because that happened before I got there. And then on the way, explained that she was one of the last ones to leave, and that's when the teacher walked up, put her hand on top of her head, kind of touched the back of her head, and you can say the rest.
So the student seen in the video has her face blurred for protection, but according to police, she was allegedly assaulted by Jordan as this situation was going down. In the body cam video, the student's voice is muted, but we have a written statement included in the police report, and here's what she described in part, quote, students left, and I was one of the last students, and she was yelling at me and called me the B word. Then she put her hands on my head and back of my neck, then moved her hands to my throat. Once the teacher knocked on the door, she walked away and I got pulled into another class. Now, the allegations from this student, they're shocking, certainly scary. What a scary situation for a teenager to be in. An authoritative figure that is supposed to be keeping students safe, now accused, calling a student a derogatory term, and then allegedly attempting to strangle her. And the report states that deputies did in fact observe red marks on the victim's neck consistent with being forcibly grabbed. According to Jordan's court docket, she is facing charges of disrupting peace by interfering with school administrative functions, disturbing peace, and battery. Now, when you hear that and you think back to what this student was saying to the point where she allegedly had red marks on her neck, you might be wondering, why aren't the charges more serious? We're going to get into the legal process here shortly, but what happened is clearly not a normal situation. And when you look at the details surrounding Jordan's alleged behavior at the school, it does raise some questions about what her mental state might have been during those moments. According to the police report, EMS was also requested at the scene based on her erratic behavior and apparent altered mental state. EMS evaluated Jordan and transported her to a local hospital. Meanwhile, quote, a records check indicated Jordan has a history of bipolar disorder. Based on her behavior on this date, Ms. Jordan displayed signs consistent with a possible mental health episode. However, there was no indication that Ms. Jordan attempted to notify school staff or remove herself from the classroom prior to the incident. Now, here's another important detail here. The resource officer appears to ask the victim's dad if he wants to press charges on Jordan, and here's how that went down.
Wanting to prosecute, press charges?
No, I don't believe we will.
No?
No.
Okay.
No, it was no harm, nothing. It was, we'll see tonight when we talk, see how she feels, but I don't think so. Okay. I think it was just whatever happened, bad day, bad medication, bad everything. Seems like, we all escaped something if it was going to get any worse, like something happened.
Well, you guys have the opportunity once he writes up the report to reach out to the state attorney's office if you choose.
If we choose to, absolutely.
Yep.
So,
do you have your license on you, please?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go get you guys a brochure. It's called a victim's rights pamphlet.
Okay.
Just for you to take home. You don't know your rights as a victim for her, but I'll give it to you. You guys can read over that. $28.55. Like, can you 65 Florida deal?
That's crazy.
Yeah, she's heard more than one.
I know what you want. Go in there. Albert, you want to stay or you want to head home?
26, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let me go get that victim's rights brochure.
Okay. Thank you.
What happened to the two?
What happened to what?
The two kids.
Chavis has one somewhere, and the other one is in front of my office where I think it's ESC specialist.
All right, I didn't know if they needed this as a witness statement.
Where's the other one at? 33. I think he's across. Chavis is with him. Cavender's office. Tw- 28.55, like 26. Thank you, like.
The teacher statement.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
All right, so this is victim's rights brochure. So throughout it, it has it on the back. It has the case number. It has my name because I did the report, and that's the sheriff's office phone number. I messed up, but that's right there.
Okay.
So what you'll do is, if you guys decide to change your mind after, you're gonna take this case number and my name, call the state attorney's office, and just let them know that you changed your mind on wanting to prosecute, and they'll be able to move forward with the prosecution if that's what you choose to do.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your help. Good luck for the rest of the day.
The police report also states that the victim said that she did not want to press charges either, with both her and her father believing that Jordan was going through a mental health episode and needed medical attention. So what happens next? Right now, Jordan is scheduled to appear for her arraignment on May 6th, with all 4 charges appearing to remain active. According to Florida state law, these charges could lead to a maximum sentence of 16 months in jail and fines up to $2,000. The Lake County Schools communications officer also gave a statement to News 6 Orlando on the day of the incident saying the following, quote, "We're aware of the arrest. Parents have been notified. The substitute teacher was hired February 4th, 2025, and employment was terminated today." According to News 6's report, the Lake County School Board chair also said that he was informed of the situation immediately and commended the students for how they responded with sensitivity to what they believed was a mental health issue. Now, that chair also referenced the district's You Are Not Alone program, which is placing mental health specialists at every high school. He said those resources are available to staff, including substitute teachers. Join us now to talk more about this, and there is a lot to talk about. Krista Ramey, trial attorney, always great to have you here on Law and Crime. Just first, what was your reaction watching all of this take place in a classroom?
I was really concerned and shocked at first. I think that we may expect a lot of things to happen in classrooms that are unexpected, but this was kind of beyond what I would ever, it was not on my bingo card.
No.
When I was like, this is the story we're going to talk about today, I thought, well, this is clearly a mental health breakdown. And I think that the school handled things appropriately. big picture. But there is a lot of holes now that you can see that exist within the education system that allow things like this to pop up and occur, which could have been very dangerous for students in that classroom, and fortunately wasn't.
Yeah, I feel like there's a balance because, obviously mental health is a huge challenge. And I think there's more awareness than maybe there was, a decade ago. And you want to be sensitive to people who struggle with those things and live with it, every single day. But then at the same time, you do talk about some of the concerns of what took place in the classroom. We looked up the Lake County School District's kind of policy when it comes to hiring employees, and a substitute teacher would fall under that. And their new hires are required to undergo drug testing and fingerprinting to show whether an applicant has a criminal history. I'm sure drug use would be included in that, looking to make sure that someone isn't struggling with that part of it, but it doesn't include mental health screenings.
Yeah.
And I think now, like, if there was a kind of a civil side to this, like, how does that factor into kind of everything going forward in this case?
So in California, for instance, and I think this is probably true in most states, what that background check is going to include, it's like a DOJ fingerprinting check. And you're going to have to, they'll also include, are you like a sex offender, will be swept up within that, so it'll include quite a bit. But with mental health, you can't ever screen for that in employment. Because there are federal laws and state laws in almost every state in place that protect individuals under the Americans with Disabilities Act and prohibit employers for discriminating against someone on the basis of their mental health status. Now, having said that, we know, for instance, that pilots of airplanes can be screened to see whether or not they can see. If their vision's bad, like me, you can't fly a plane unless that's corrected. So there's things that, with your health that do play a role and that employers can take into account. Now, whether or not someone has bipolar disorder is a completely manageable mental health situation. Under most cases, it can be handled with appropriate medication and therapies and all of that. But, here, obviously, there was a breakdown. There was a mental health breakdown. But I don't think that you could ever get any kind of pre-employment screening that would include someone's mental health or physical health, for that matter, as a precondition for employment. Now, let me just add one more thing, Chris.
Yeah.
I think that you can also say that, if there's been prior breakdowns for, mental health issues, and those have resulted in arrests, like this did, for instance, that might get included in a screening, and that might pop. So it might you might find out about it in another way.
Because I kind of wonder on like the flip side of it, before we get to, the charges that Miss Jordan has been hit with, like if she's applying for a job and an employer would see or somehow find out, maybe there's an anecdote around town that it's like, oh, hey, she's bipolar. And I don't know if that's the condition that she has in this case, but there's some sort of mental health issue. Like you couldn't not hire someone because of having a mental health issue, right?
Yeah, it'd be illegal. If that was your reason for not hiring them, you could get hit with an employment lawsuit.
Which is like an interesting kind of like when you see like when things go bad in the classroom, like from what we see in this body camera video and what police are laying out, it's the type, no one wants to be in that situation. It's like, how do you prevent it? But then at the same time, if you're not screening for it, it's kind of hard to say if there's no prior history related to it that, maybe there was, certainly now I think moving forward, we've seen that her employment there has been terminated as a substitute teacher. How does, and I know there's like a battery charge that's there. How does the fact that if it was this mental health breakdown and there's really nothing that she could have done about it, this is just an issue that she deals with, that's the reality of it. How does that factor into the criminal case that's playing out?
Well, I think that that's one of the reasons why she wasn't charged for any felonies, that she was only charged with misdemeanors. And I think that the school didn't even want her to be charged at all, in terms of, the school officials saying that they didn't want to press charges against her, appreciating that she had a mental health crisis that occurred. And I think that was probably the right decision. I think that, you do charge them, law enforcement broke some laws, and let's, but they're misdemeanors. I mean, they're by the time they're taken care of, they'll be the equivalent of a parking ticket or infraction. They won't come up on any kind of criminal background check in the future, with a misdemeanor charge.
And even with that, with like mental health, I mean, this is something for her that would be on her record, like potentially forever. Like even if, because there's part of it where it's, again, I mean, if you can't control that you have this mental health episode, it's just a reality of what you live with. But then at the same time, like, I don't know what she would do for work after this, of like, you're still kind of going to live with the hate. And it's obviously now all over the internet, and people are going to see this body cam video, but like, that's something that even like, how does the legal system look at that if, as an attorney, you're able to kind of argue like, hey, this was something she just couldn't control?
I think that when you're looking at it from, fighting any kind of criminal charges are separate from, employment or employability issues. So when you're looking at it from fighting any criminal charges, we know that, our mental health status can play a role in both whether or not you're competent to stand trial and or whether or not you have the mental state to commit a crime. So, whether or not she was understood and appreciated right from wrong at the time when she did the acts that she did, that is a complete defense. That's not guilty by reason of insanity. Or alternatively, that she's not, cannot assist counsel in trying a case because she is not mentally competent. Those are the issues that will pop on the criminal side, and will affect the criminal case, and probably affected the charging decisions, and may affect whether or not a DA decides to pursue those criminal misdemeanor charges that were ultimately filed, or just plead them out. I would suspect they would just get pled out. You're not going to try this woman. I mean, I think that a DA would look like, DAs are supposed to do justice. This is not about wins and losses. And so what is the right thing to do under the circumstances? And I don't think that it's to make sure that these misdemeanor charges are carried through. So I think that that's the criminal side. The civil side, or the employability side, is a little different. I think that, unfortunately now this is on the internet, like you said, and this is going to follow her around. And so she's got work to do in terms of getting her mental health under control and working and living with her bipolar disorder. I mean, there's celebrities that famously have bipolar disorder. Sure. Catherine Zeta-Jones has talked about it. I remember on, talk shows about living with bipolar disorder. So you can live with bipolar disorder and be a completely functioning member of society and not be a danger to anybody. On the flip side, you can be very dangerous to other people with bipolar disorder, and it needs to be controlled. So I think that she's got some work to do.
Does she have a case on the civil side for, like, is there any sort of, and she's been charged with, again, like these misdemeanors, which kind of go on the record, but like, is there a case even for her, like when it comes to like any sort of wrongful termination, if like, this was just a mental health issue?
No, first of all, remember she was a sub. So she wasn't,
right.
So she wasn't a credentialed, tenured, protected by a union teacher. She was a substitute teacher that is a temporary employee at best. You're at will in most states for employment. You're not, you can get terminated for any reason as long as it's not an illegal reason. Under almost every single state in this country's employment laws. Unless you have a contract like a credentialed teacher would. So she doesn't have those protections of a contract or a union. And she had a breakdown in a classroom that put children's lives in danger. I think that, terminating the relationship with her was completely appropriate on the part of the school. It had nothing to do with her mental health. It had to do with her behavior, her erratic behavior in the classroom on that day. And it put kids' lives in danger.
And it seems like for whether it was the students in this case, parents of the student who was involved in this, and then you have even school officials. It just didn't seem like people wanted to press charges. Like that was the message. What impact does that have on a prosecutor who decides whether or not to move forward with charges that, like, hey, the people that were there, the people who were involved, they just want this, they're saying, please don't press charges in this case.
You look at things like, how would a jury respond to this? And if the witnesses and the involved victims, if you will, the complaining victims don't want charges pressed because of how sympathetic it is and how sympathetic she is, in terms of you don't want, you want her to be taken care of rather than dealt with in the criminal justice system. I think you're going to think, how are 12 jurors in a box going to look at this case? And are they going to agree that there's criminal charges should be brought and that she was guilty of them? And you got to remember, like I said, prosecutors, they have discretion to file cases, but they're supposed to use that discretion in a way that is meant to do justice, not to win or lose cases or get verdicts. So I don't think a prosecutor's going to think about trying this case. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's shocking video. You do think of some of the concern in the classroom at the time that it could have become, so clearly in this case, like you have people saying that they just didn't want charges to be filed, but at the same time, like it could have been more dangerous than it actually ended up being. We'll see what happens on the criminal side of it and any sort of civil action potentially going forward. Krista Ramey, always great to have you on Law&Crime Trial Attorney. Thanks for your expertise on this. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.